Good afternoon, Professor Prakash Chandra Pradhan, distinguished participants and partakers. I am immensely delighted to facilitate the Day 3, Week 2 of International Faculty Development Program on Emerging Trends in English Literature. English literature surveys the commonalities and diversity across the nations, cultures, and societies. Lately, in the era of digital hominization and pan-humanism, the relevance of English literature becomes all too indispensable to understand the organization of relations among humans, of relations with nature, and of relations with technology. The present program aimed to delve into this great transformation of human socio-cultural and political existence as manifested in the current trends of English literature. Today's session, examining one such trends of English literature, envisage diasporic consciousness. The condition of diaspora has extended discourses of race, identity, and culture. As these concepts have evolved, been contested, and re-evaluated, theories of diaspora have contributed to changes in their meanings. The discussion today focuses on the theory and narratives of experiences of displacement as a means for exploring and thinking about what this means for teaching and learning literature. Thus, to begin today's session, I invite Dr. Arina Nazneen, convener IFDP, for welcome note. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks much, Ms. Vania, for giving me this opportunity. I'm highly honored and feel privileged to have been given the opportunity to welcome our speaker of the day. On the behalf of the Department of Languages Integral University, I cordially welcome Professor Prakash Chandra Pradhan in the second week of the International Faculty Development Program. Sir is a noted academician and has contributed richly to the growth and expansion of English literature. Sir is a professor of English at Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, India. He holds DLit PhD and MPhil degrees from Utkal University. His areas of interest include post-colonial studies, new literature in English, Indian writing in English, translation studies, feminism, eco-critical studies, diaspora studies, British literature, American literature, stylistics, discourse analysis, etc. He has published 5 books, 64 research articles in magazines, and edited many research journals, books, and magazines. He was also a UGC visiting fellow, teacher fellow, and recipient of teacher research grant. Professor Pradhan has guided more than 20 research scholars for their PhD. He has also presented papers, acted as a resource person, chaired session, and organized seminars, conferences, and refresher courses. His today's session on the topic Diaspora Studies, Conceptualizing Diasporic Consciousness will add a new spike to the academic discourse. So, without wasting time, I would like to invite Sir to accelerate a new way of critical thinking. Over to you, Sir.
Hello, hello, hello. Should I start? Hello, hello. Are you
Yes,
able to hear?
yes, sir. Yes, sir, you're
Should I?
audible. And yes, sir. So
Uh,
your PPT is also live. Your PPT is also
uh,
on the screen, so you may start.
okay. So, uh, yes. Uh, so I am glad that I have been invited to this FTD Faculty Development Program organized by Integral University Lucknow. At the outset, I must express my thanks to the authorities of the university and the organizing committee members, and more specifically to Dr. Najreen, who has contacted me for this program. Okay, so I'm not going to the details, and then let us come straight to the topic. So, in the today's world, English literature, in the contemporary English literature, we have many branches of study in theory, and also English literature has new literatures of which are created by the countries which were once upon a time ruled by Great Britain. So therefore, there are Australian literature, African literature, Indian literature in English, and so many other literatures that we know. But today, there are so many studies, eco-critical studies, diaspora studies, and many other studies. But today, we will talk about diaspora studies. Diaspora studies. Yes, diaspora studies is very important today because we have many people who are moving from one country to the other. Diaspora study is also an emerging area of study. In the last decade of 20th century, this study has emerged. In 1991, a journal was launched. The name of the journal was Journal of Transnational Studies. Diaspora literature deals with the fate and predicament of the diaspora, and necessary because hyphenated. Yes, diaspora study deals with the fragmented, fragmented and hyphenated identities, the existence of the people who are having the difficulties, and because of their experience of homelessness, alienation, nostalgia, ethnic violence, and discrimination because they belong to different race, culture, and identity. The increase of diasporas in the contemporary times results in the proliferation of literary narratives. A large number of novels and poems have been written to express their fragmented conditions. So, diaspora studies is a field of scholarship that has developed at the crossroads of cultural and literary studies, the social sciences, history, and political science. Diaspora in literary theory refers to the displacement of an individual community or groups of people from the original homeland to an alien territory, also connoting it also connotes a cultural transition from pure roots to mixed customs in the adopted land. Diaspora studies is an academic field established in the later part of 20th century to study dispersed ethnic populations, which are often termed diaspora peoples. The usage of the term diaspora carries the connotation of forced resettlement due to expulsion, coercion, slavery, racism, or war, especially nationalistic conflicts. So, okay, in the last decade of 20th century, Arthur Braha wrote a book, Cartographies of Diaspora, published in 96. Robin Cohen has written another book, Global Diaspora and Introduction, in 97. Gabriel Sefer has written the book Diaspora Politics, A Home Abroad, 2003. Stephen Dufekes wrote another book, Diaspora 2003, published in 2003. Stuart Hull also has written an article, Cultural Identity and Diaspora. And Homike Bhabha's book, The Location of Culture, is also a seminal book in this field. So, okay, so 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 in this lecture, so we have divided our lecture into two parts. One is the origin and problematizing the term diaspora, and in the second part, we have conceptualized the term diaspora. So diaspora as a concept has drawn the attention of the scholars for a long time. In recent times, the meaning of the term has been rethought because the earlier meaning of the term associated with homelessness has been reviewed in the past. The diasporic community were living in a foreign country due to the compulsion of the economic needs. The origin of Indian diaspora traces back to the indenture system introduced by the imperial regime of Great Britain in the early part of 9th century. Migration to different parts of the world by Indians for trade and commerce, of course, traces back to much earlier in history. The old Indian diasporas were longing to come back to their homeland because they felt that they were leading a life of deprivation and exploitation. However, after independence, the new diasporas have voluntarily chosen their condition of self-exile for a glamorous life in their chosen destinations. Often they also experience a sense of loss and anguish when they cherish the memory of their cultural roots. These new diasporas are different from the old, as the latter long for intellectual freedom, secularism, and liberty for their country. This lecture is therefore an attempt to understand a perspective of the old and new diasporas with reference to select theoretical formulations. So, okay, coming to the first part of the lecture, the term diaspora. The term diaspora has its roots in the Greek word dia over spiro, to show, meaning to scatter or disperse. It was first used for the Jews who were sent into exile after Nebuchadnezzar's conquest of Babylon. The Jews were wandering in exile throughout the world. It also carries religious, philosophical, political, and eschatological connotations because a special relationship is understood to exist between the land of Israel and the Jewish people. Thinking of this meaning, the South African freedom fighter Dr. Fatima Mir averred the term diaspora, adding that it describes overseas Indians as a people. Yes, as a people without home. Uh, she, um, she said, we Indian South Africans have had to struggle hard to claim our South Africanness, and that is something we jealously guard. We are not diaspora of India. So she uttered all this during the first Pravasi Bharatiya Divas in January 2003, detesting the use of the term to describe people of Indian descent. Of course, diaspora was once a term that referred primarily to the Jewish dispersion. So it has, however, come to be used to refer to contemporary situations that involve the experiences of migration, expatriate workers, refugees, exiles, ethnic communities. It indicates a distance and separation from a society of origin with which there is a continuous affinity. Diaspora is associated with minority and migrant populations that involve experiences of transnational identity. The term transnational is also used in the diasporic sense to denote ethnic ties that cross national boundaries. Diasporas are shaped through migration along specific routes and histories, carrying collective memories and similar identity values. They retain their own distinctiveness in relation to their daily transactions to others around them. Now, coming to the debate over the second slide, slide 4, the debate over the propriety of the term still continues in academic circles, though diasporic studies has become the standard description for academic work on minorities living away from their ancestral homelands. Despite its close connection to the Jewish people and also to Israel, the term has come handy to denote to migrant communities around the world. In recent times, the term diaspora has been used to describe any minority community that can trace its origin from another land. So this term has common usage in international political circles because the developed countries which have when receiving large-scale migrants formulate policies to integrate ethnic minorities to their social system. However, it still remains a problematic term, especially in the countries that regard their migrant groups as outsiders. It is so because it inevitably tends to draw comparisons with the Jewish diaspora, denoting at the same time a transnational motivation and linking it to a common religious, cultural, and political thought. So next slide. So in the countries that are the process of national building like South Africa, any reference to transnational affinities with a lost homeland is suspected in the host country. The celebration of a migrant community is a modern concept of recent origin in Western countries. In many countries, migrants are still struggling for acceptance as full-fledged citizens of the adopted land. And talking about diasporic loyalties raises suspicion as it can set them apart. But more and more countries are trying to use the influence of their successful migrant communities, though purists may disapprove of the use of diaspora to describe overseas communities. The usage has come to stay still. A new stay still, yes, until a new coinage is accepted. By the late 1980s, a new age of Asian development had started with a new economic boom in Southeast Asia. The rapid development of the economies of Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia was the contribution of the industrious Chinese communities. China's growing ties with America and the economic reforms in China under Deng Xiaoping brought a change in attitude towards communist China. Overseas Chinese enjoyed China's image as a powerful and influential state, which added respect for the homeland. China's nuclear capability in its independent stance and challenges to the West made the Chinese people proud. It does not mean that they are willing to return home, but the power and prestige strengthened the desire to maintain ties with China. However, in recent times, China has behaved inappropriately in respect of certain international issues for which its image has been tarnished. So, in next slide, so many countries have made efforts to channelize the energies of the overseas communities, but none have been so effectively used as the Jewish and Chinese diaspora. The Chinese government has focused mainly on economic benefits of its diaspora, while the Jewish diaspora is focused on religious and political issues pertaining to Israel. The Jewish diaspora and its organizations promote the interest of the state of Israel through its connections to international community. It is a significantly prosperous community around the world. It exhibits much influence in American politics and is an important factor in American policies towards West Asia and Israel. Indians in the United States have tried to connect themselves through Jewish lobbying groups in their efforts to reach American politicians in the United States Congress, in the US Congress. So governments have offered a large number of facilities to keep in touch with the diasporas, regular conferences, committees to advise parliament, even nominated seats in the legislature, active encouragement to visit the homeland have kept the migrant communities connected. More and more countries are trying to reach out to prosperous immigrants for a variety of reasons that include forcing the influence, enhancing a global presence, reducing immigration costs, and promoting So, large scale migration from Asia began when Europe's imperial powers established colonies in the New World to meet the demand for tropical commodities like rubber, sugarcane, tea, coffee in Europe. The colonies initiated colonies' initial need for labor at the plantations, the tin and the gold mines was made through slaves. But when slavery was abolished throughout the British Empire in 1833, the plantation owners needed um, replacements for the African slave labor. A substitute workforce was sought in India and Indian and Chinese immigrant workers on indenture. So over 1.5 million Indians went overseas to earn a living in the 19th and the early part of 20th century to Burma, Malaysia, Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific Islands. By 1938, the overseas Indians spread over a belt which ran around the equator from the North Atlantic over the Indian Ocean to the South Pacific. Since the Indian community spread over a belt which ran around the equator from the North Atlantic over the Indian Ocean to the South Pacific, since the Indian community spread over a belt which ran around the equator from the North Atlantic over the Indian Ocean to the South Pacific. Yes, I got back. So by 938, the overseas Indians spread over a belt which ran around the equator from the North Atlantic over the Indian Ocean to the South Pacific. Since the Indian community abroad grew to over 20 million, with people of Indian descent spread throughout the world with a considerable presence in about 110 countries, the overseas Indian community spread widely, and after the Jewish and the Chinese, it was the largest diaspora at that time. But in 2019, it was found that the Indian diaspora is the largest now. Okay, so it is a heterogeneous group, but is formed of numerous segments that correspond to the time of migration, the place of origin in India, and the country of settlement. Educational levels, class background, age, and gender are also important factors to make other differences. For about 200 years, migrants went to Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and other Southeast Asian countries as indentured workers. They went to the colonies to work in Trinidad and Tobago, Mauritius, Suriname, South Africa, and Fiji. Even before the 19th century, there had also been migration. Migration is um, certainly an important part of history, and through the ages, people have traveled far away to find land, food, and work. The myth of Indians as a traditionally homesick people is rather unacceptable because, in reality, the seafaring coastal regions have a tradition of mobility and maritime history. So, growing migration of human populations across the geographical, cultural, and political frontiers in recent times has impacted in increase of critical theories on diaspora. Diasporic consciousness is a very important feature in the writings of the writers staying away from their native land. These writers are often preoccupied with the feelings of dislocation, exploitation, nostalgia, and racial bias. So their writings also relate to hybridity, marginalization, and protest against injustice. In intellectual circles, two types of diasporas are much discussed: the old diaspora and the new diaspora. In its old sense, the term signifies to the Jews living outside Palestine or modern Israel. The contextual significance of the term refers to a dispersion of or migration of people coming from the same country or having common culture. In a wider perspective, the term connotes the evolution of all human civilizations and culture. The primitive human beings were first located in Africa. However, they later on spread over to several places of human settlement and societies all over the world, thereby rendering the human condition as diasporic. In reference to the Indian poetic tradition and Judeo-Christian tradition, we understand that the human situation is diasporic. Separation of human from God is also a diasporic situation. In the Indian context, we know that Atma, soul, and Brahma, the great soul Paramatma, are also separated when the soul bound to a body takes birth on the earth. The diasporic situation has therefore a philosophical significance. The term's meaning relating to its Greek origin is based on a political connotation, meaning voluntary or forcible movement of the people from their homeland into new regions. Um, yes, new regions. Yes, and they found that millions of Europeans and the natives, the yes, Ashcroft and other colleagues Griffith and Ellen Griffin, they two projects, and they have found that the Canadian two projects on colonialism and imperialism, which are related to radical diasporic movements, they found that millions of Europeans and natives were dislocated at different regions. These scholars believe in human condition as a diasporic from historical perspective. The indenture system after the abolition of slavery contributed to diasporic condition of a large number of people from the colonized Asian countries to different parts of the British Empire. This involved transporting under under indenture agreements large populations of poor agricultural laborers from areas such as India and China to areas where they were needed to service plantations. The practices of slavery and indenture thus resulted in worldwide diasporas. So next, Gandhiji's association with the diasporas. This historical incident resulted in substantial increase of indenture workers known as gimitias in the West Indies. These gimitias are the contractor laborers. So they went to the foreign country on contract. In the West Indies, Malaysia, Fiji, Mauritius, and the colonies of the East and South Africa. Gandhiji as a Girmit himself mobilized the disparate and despair-ridden Gimitias in South Africa for about 21 years, from 1893 to 1914, amidst the hostile circumstances of racism, colonialism, and other forms of oppression. His efforts to organize these Gimitias as a political conscious people are noteworthy. He saw that the Indians, both indentured and freed, suffered indignities of racial abuse of all kinds, sharing their common feelings of alienation, nostalgia, possession of mythical memories, displacement, and racism. He could mobilize them to strive for their upliftment. The the diasporic consciousness involves a number of feelings and conditions, namely alienation, dispersal, longing for the ancestral land, double identification with homeland and the country of adoption, identity crisis, remembrance of myths, legends, and cultural traditions related to homeland, protest against discrimination of all sorts in a new land. The metaphor of imaginary homelands sums up the conditions of the diasporic communities. Very often, the condition of diaspora is compared to the condition of the idea of Indian mythical king Trisanku. Trisanku's in-between space. The this Pradesh dialectic is also crucial to understand diasporic consciousness. So in South Africa, Gandhiji fought for the cause of the marginalized who were subject to racial hatred and exploitation. His theory of freedom, struggle to liberate the downtrodden, is based on truth and non-violence, satyagraha and ahimsa, which are his weapons of spiritual force. Since diasporic discourse is largely political, based on power relationship, Gandhiji therefore never wanted a separate homeland for the Indians in South Africa. He rather wished a mutually shared socio-cultural space in South Africa. The hybrid condition should have to be used for political empowerment of the most deprived diasporic subjects. In his autobiography, Gandhiji seems to be a writer of diasporic consciousness. There has been a great focus on the English writers of Indian origin, namely Salman Rushdie, B.S. Naipaul, Nirad Chaudhary, Amitabh Ghosh, and many others, Bharati Mukherjee, and many others. So their works portray the complex discursive issues of multiculturalism, diasporic hybrid identities, international imaginary, dislocation, and exile. Major diasporic theoretical formulations revolve around Homi Bhabha, Stuart Hall, Gayatri Spivak, Robert Young, and many others. So these writers are theorists, dominate in the areas of studies such as post-colonialism, post-modernism, cultural studies, new historicism, and diasporic studies. So in this first part of the lecture, so we have problematized the term diaspora, its origin, development, and how people are suffering in different countries, and how the old diasporas have a need to move because of economic conditions, and how the new diasporas also move for a glamorous life in the foreign land. So now in the second part of this lecture, we will conceptualize conceptualize the notion, the concept of diaspora. So, okay. The notion of diaspora is therefore a contested field of study. Any conceptualization of the term leads to debatable discussion. Submitting theoretical formulations on diaspora seems to be impossible. Any theory of diaspora should not be author-centered. Stuart Hall writes, in an era of globalization, we are all becoming diasporic. Salman Rushdie, Edward Said, and George Steiner also make such claims. Stuart Hall's claim foregrounds the contemporary world reality in the transnational movement. It also evidences exultant claims made in respect of philosophical diasporization affected by the process of globalization. Diaspora has a semantic domain stretched in various directions, resulting in different meanings: exile, refugee, immigrant, migrant, nomad, privileged, non-resident Indian, NRI, PIO, person of Indian origin. It also refers to many types of diaspora: classical diaspora, first, second, and third generation diaspora, trading diaspora, mobilized diaspora, catastrophic diaspora, victim diaspora, and so on. Many thinkers have laid emphasis on the need to regulate the spacious boundaries of diaspora through its rigorous conceptualization. Jana Evans, Brazil, and Anita Manur are critical of the reckless use of the term diaspora in their introduction of the book Theorizing Diaspora. The term diaspora, they say, the term diaspora risks losing specificity and critical merit if it is deemed to speak for all movements and migrations between nations, within nations, between cities, within cities, ad infinitum. So they argue that the term diaspora should be theorized so that it can be employed as a useful method of study in literature. The term diaspora has flexible meanings for which it poses certain problems in its theorization. Slide number 14. Although theories are often generalizations, a theory of diaspora is often useful for bringing in a perspective to it. A number of theorists have contributed to the theorization of diaspora through their meaningful formulations. The following theorists are noteworthy: Edward Said, Homike Bhabha, Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, Stuart Hall, Paul Gilroy, R. Radhakrishnan, Surabhi Rath, Vijay Mishra, Vijay Mishra, Robin Cohen, and N. Raman. So many others are also there. Sudesh Mishra and others. They have engaged in discussing the conflicted but interrelated territories of home location, nation, post nation, inside, outside, citizen, stranger, pure hybrid, roots, center, periphery, sameness, difference, and subject object, which crisscross and class. It has resulted in diaspora searching for its multi referential signification. These binaries bring with them traces of their past relations and interactions also. Their affiliations with post-structuralism, postmodernism, and post-colonialism add still greater complexity to the concept of diaspora. This complexity of the term is responsible because it has been appropriated in a variety of disciplines and discourses. This complexity might bring about disintegration of dispersal of diaspora and diasporization of diaspora. The comments of Rogers Brubaker are relevant to quote here. He argues that the term has proliferated and its meaning has been stretched to accommodate the various intellectual, cultural, and political agendas in the service of which it has been enlisted. This has resulted in what one might call a diaspora, a dispersion of the meanings of the term in semantic, conceptual, and disciplinary space. Next slide, 15. The early studies treated diaspora as bounded entities. William Safran denied the term in an ideal way. Um, Define that term in an ideal way. James Clifford illustrates Safran's model. He enlists his main features of Safran's conceptualization of expatriate minority status of diaspora, a history of dispersal, number one, niche memories of homeland, two, alienation in the host, bad host, three, country, desire for eventual return, 4, ongoing support of the homeland, 5, and a collective identity, importantly defined by these relations, the 6. So such a formulation of saffron, however, suggests that the diasporic subjects have homogeneous and collective identities bound together by shared feelings of alienation and having a very strong nostalgic longing for the place of origin. Clifford is not happy with an ideal type of conceptualization because the pure forms are ambivalent, even embattled over basic features. Um, Alluding to Jewish diaspora, the discussions drew on a conceptual homeland, yes, grounding himself in a nationalistic space. Makrand Paranjape has also a similar notion. He thinks that the diasporas must involve in a cross-cultural passage to have a unique diasporic consciousness. He pleads that there has to be a source country and a target country, a source culture and a target culture, a source language and a target language, a source religion and a target religion, and so on. Also, the crossing must be forced, not voluntary. Otherwise, the passage will only amount to an enactment of desire, fulfillment, or even if voluntary, the passage must involve some significant tension between the source and the target cultures. However, such specific ways of definition and listing characteristic features seem to be simplistic, counterpoising. Such schematic theories, some recent thinkers take rather different stances. Homi Bhabha, Stuart Hull, Avatar Bra, R. Radhakrishnan, and others draw on such terms as hybridity, palimpsest identities, displacement, decenterment, differences, and alterity, which have strong affiliations with post-structuralism, post-modernism, and post-colonialism. Homike Bhabha talks about hybrid identity of diaspora in his location of culture, gathering of exiles, and he says, gathering of exiles and emigres and refugees, gathering on the edge of foreign cultures, gathering of the frontiers, gathering in the ghettos or caves of city centers, gathering in the whole life, half light of foreign tongues, or in the uncanny fluency of another tongue language gatherings, the signs of approval and acceptance, degrees, discourses, disciplines, gathering the memories of underdevelopment of other worlds lived retroactively, gathering the past in a ritual of revival, gathering the present. So this is what Bhava views. The diasporas are hyphenated and hybrid subjects because they are fragmented subjects, because they inhabit liminal spaces, the borders, so liminal spaces, and they have intercultural experiences, the intersectional experiences. However, this hybridity is not natural and organic, since there is no blending and reconciliation of codes of cultures, race, color, ethnicity, and gender. So this hybridity is self-reflexive and is the result of a conscious negotiation with its informing elements. The hybrid existence of the diasporas draws attention to the fluid identities, which are continuously reframed in ongoing negotiation with the changing political environment. To slide number 18, now we will discuss Stuart Hull's idea. Stuart Hull argues that the diaspora experience is defined not by essence or purity, but by recognition of a necessary heterogeneity. All the diasporas in the foreign countries or different countries, they are not a uniform group. They are heterogeneous. So and diverse by conception of identity, which lives with and through not despite difference by hybridity, and diaspora identities are constantly producing and reproducing themselves anew through transformation and difference. This indeterminacy of the fluid diaspora identities in the world of in the words of Jacqueline Lowe, disrupts homology between cultural, racial, and national identity. The hyphen also draws attention towards the suppressed histories of cross-cultural and cross-racial relations. The self-reflexive hybridity, in Bhaba's words, an insurgent act of cultural translation, is rife with a subversive potential to unsettle hegemonic relations as it focuses on processes of negotiation and contestation. So between cultures, hybridity and hyphenation, according to Jacqueline Lowe, offer an alternative organizing category for a new politics of representation, which is informed by an awareness of diaspora and its contradictory, ambivalent, and generative potential. Baba therefore thinks that the in between important part of history and through the in between space occupied by the diasporic subject has creative possibilities. It is the space of intervention emerging in the cultural interstices that introduces creative intervention into existence. Like Bhava, Salman Rushdie and Edward Said also visualize creative potentialities in the exilic condition. For Avatar Braha, the diaspora space is the intersectionality of diaspora border and dislocation is a point of confluence of economic, political, cultural, and psychic processes. It is where multiple subject positions are juxtaposed, contested, proclaimed, or disavowed. So he therefore argues that diaspora space is a highly contested site. So coming to 19, so therefore this is eclectic diversity. So an important level, namely eclectic hybridity, is necessary to be discussed as it refers to the fusion of music, cuisines, and cultures. It is a postmodern pastiche culture containing variety of elements and also refers to variety of influence. So this category of hybridity tends to empty the term hybridity of its political content and historical specificity and exposes it to the charge of blocking the pain of living in diaspora, for suppressing the suffering of the exile in their celebration of cultural hybridity. And the third space, Aizaz Ahmad, Benita Perry, and Lawrence Phillips have critiqued Bhava, Rushdie, and Said. Nikos Papastagiadis argues for a sense of diaspora that says more about a sensibility towards cultural transformation than designating a place of arrival or rebirth. So, intentional hybridity as a condition of conscious negotiation of intersecting cultures means that we cannot see diasporas in integrated perspectives. Diasporas cannot be integrated, so they are heterogeneous group. So considered as a sensibility towards cultural transformation, diaspora can be regarded as a practice since Brubaker's analysis has been to desubstantialize it by treating it as a category of practice rather than as a restricted group. We can therefore talk about the diasporic project in terms of destabilizing generalized claims made on behalf of nation, culture, race, gender, and so on. The hyphenated diasporic subject embodies difference relationally and non-hierarchically. So therefore, R. Radhakrishnan says peoples and cultures are different and the all important issues is how to receive and practice difference rationally and non-hierarchically. In other words, how to create a society that will not evaluate some differences more positively than others. Furthermore, practicing or embodying differences. A great example is the project of dwelling rigorously and passionately in the hyphen within succumbing to total integration on either side of ethnic hyphenation. That is, sustaining difference along multiple axes without totalization does not have to take the form of an ideologically reductive and non-porous identity politics. Differences and heterogeneities can be practiced openly, relationally, and as invitations to reach an ongoing heterogeneous rather than be primed as a raw material for some grand unification or cultivated or hotbeds of separatist thought. So now coming to another important theorist Gloria Anzaldúa, a Mexican American, who has written in her book Borderland La Frontera, the new mestiza, the mestiza consciousness, 1987, talks about the emergence of a new consciousness that is known as mestiza consciousness. Borderlands is an example of the performativity of the hyphenated diasporic subjectivity and the diasporic epistemology, which locates itself squarely in the realm of hybrid, in the domain of cross-cultural and contaminated social and cultural regimes. Yes, Anjaldua writes, in a constant state of mental nepantilism. Nepantilism refers to the oscillation between two ways. Okay, between ways. An Aztec word, this is an Aztec term meaning torn between ways. La mestiza is a product of the transfer of the cultural and spiritual values of one group to another, being tricultural, monolingual, bilingual, or multilingual speaking. A pathways and in a state of perpetual the mestiza faces the dilemma of the mixed breed, which collectively does the daughter of a dark-skinned mother listen to. So Anjaljua faces the ambivalence and leaves the pain of juggling not two but three cultures, cradled in one culture, sandwiched between two cultures, straddling all three cultures and their value systems. La Mestiza undergoes a struggle of place, a struggle of borders, an inner war. So the new Mestiza has to develop tolerance for contradictions and ambiguities. And in doing so, she acquires a plural personality. This flexibility opens up new creative possibilities for her. The focal point or fulcrum, that juncture where the mestiza stands, is where phenomena tend to collide. It is where the possibility of uniting all that is separate occurs. The assembly is not one where severed or separated pieces merely come together, nor is it a balancing of opposite powers. In attempting to work out a synthesis, the self has added a third element which is greater than the sum of its several parts. This third element is a new consciousness, a mestiza consciousness. And though it is a source of intense pain, its energy comes from continual creative motion that keeps breaking down the unitary aspects of each new paradigm. Anjaljua interrogates, Anjalva interrogates her hyphenated identity and does not privilege either side of the hyphen. She questions both the sides of her ethnic hyphenation. I am an act of, she says, I am an act of needing are uniting and joining that not only has produced both a creature of darkness and a creature of light, but also a creature that questions the definition of light and dark and gives them new meanings. Such reflexive and radical hybridity retains the oppositional frame of reference diaspora evokes. Next slide, that is the last slide perhaps. The theories discussed in the preceding pages elucidates that diaspora diasporas are regarded as the deterritorialized other of the territorialized nation state, which is considered as a homogeneous unity, though yes, the theories discussed in the preceding page. Yes, I'm sorry. Um, since there is always a hunting desire for the homeland, the diasporas are therefore affected by diasporic consciousness. Though Rusdi and Bharati Mukherjee talk about multiculturalism and assimilation respectively, Avtar Braha, however, talks about the idea of homing desire. The concept of diaspora places the discourse of home and dispersion in creative tension, inscribing a homing desire, while simultaneously critiquing discourses of fixed origins. Homing desire is not the same as desire for homeland. It is rather a desire for creating a home in the host culture. The old diasporas cannot accept such homing desire. They would rather prefer to have a constant desire for their homeland, as they are constantly affected by a diasporic consciousness. So this is all, and the next slide is the references. References, please also tell the slide, show the slide, the next two slides, which are references in the context of this lecture. So the references, please show the slides. So okay, you are not showing the slides. Anyway, please. So now in this lecture we have referred to two aspects. One is the problematization of the term, um, problematization of the term, origin of the term, debate over the term, migrants dilemma, Jewish and Chinese diaspora, indenture and Indian diaspora, development of theories and diaspora, significance of the term diaspora, Gandhiji's experience with the diaspora, diasporic consciousness, Gandhiji's understanding diaspora and other writers on diaspora. That is the first part of the lecture. So where we have problematized, we have referred to different developments, historical perspectives, and the recent migrations, and the significance of these migrant people. Okay, in the second part of the lecture, we have conceptualized. So how we can develop an insight and precision of diasporic studies, and how we can after developing an insight and precision of diasporic studies, we can apply these to different novels and poetry. Different novels and poetry are other works. Of course, in this lecture, we cannot, and it is not possible on our part to refer to those applications of insights and precision, but you can very well, after developing this insight and precision with the references to the theoretical formulations that we have discussed, you will definitely develop some kind of a perspective, some kind of insight, some kind of precision of the theories formulated. So, and then you can apply taking certain parameters. Suppose you are taking the novels of B.S. Naipaul, or Salman Rushdie, or Bharati Mukherjee, or Rohitan Mistry. So many writers and some poets also. So they are also presenting diasporic consciousness and the dilemma of a diaspora and the predicament of a diaspora, and all some good things of the diaspora, and how the diasporas also contribute a lot to the nation, to their nation of origin, and to the nation where they are living. So the diasporas have multiple experiences, multiple merits, okay, and they have contributed their contribution to the world, to the country of origin, and to the in the country of country where they live. They are doing a lot of things for the people. So therefore, after conceptualization, we find that so heterogeneity, the diasporas are not a uniform group. There is heterogeneity, diversity, and therefore the term eclectic diversity will be more appropriate. And Radhakrishnan acknowledges the differences. There are differences in diaspora. Any diasporic group cannot have the same idea, same suffering. So therefore, that is the Anjal Dua says the synthesis of cultures, and the third culture is developed. And Bharati Mukherjee and Salman Rushdie, they are also talking about multiculturalism and assimilation. So this is all about the this lecture. Okay, so if anything else we may discuss. This is all what I say. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Dear participants, the session is open for questions. If you have any, please type it in the chat box.
No questions, participants, if you have any problems, then we may discuss. Okay. No questions.
Thank you so much, sir. And now I would like to invite Dr. S.W. Wahash Mohsin, Associate Professor, Department of Languages, Integral University, to propose vote of thanks. But before that, we have one question, sir. So before sir can proceed, we would like to highlight this question.
Yes, yes. Some diasporas have renounced hyphenated identities, yet they are diasporas. So, what is the fourth space in diaspora? Hyphenated, some diasporas have renounced the hyphenated identities, yet they are diasporas. So, what is the fourth space in diaspora? So, you see, diasporas have gone from a country and they live in a country, and again, they after they are a culture to a country, so they have three cultures. But then, what is this fourth space? You say the fourth space can be that they are the global diasporas. They can move to different parts, and they can develop multiple cultures. So multiculturalism will be the fourth space in my view. The multiculturalism, that will be the fourth space. Okay. Any other question? Okay. Multiculturalism will be the fourth space, and need tolerance, multiculturalism. Okay.
Thank you, sir. And now I would like to invite Dr. S.W. Wahash Mohsin, Associate Professor, Department of Languages, Integral University, to propose vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Vanya, for giving me this privilege. Warm and cherished afternoon to our celebrated speaker, Professor Prakash Chandra Pradhan, a gem of Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, who has illuminated this session with his profound knowledge. Dear Professor, your lecture has definitely familiarized all of us with a number of worthy and interesting ideas and key concepts of diaspora. Your scholarly intervention into the sphere of diaspora has given us an opportunity to navigate across uncharted territory. It is a privilege to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of all those who have worked hard to make this event a success. Dear Professor, I extend heartfelt gratitude to you on behalf of the Department of Languages for enchanting, mesmerizing, captivating, and enthralling the participants with worthy insight into the corpus of conceptualizing diaspora. Sir, you have covered such a vast spectrum by throwing light on concepts and terminology of diaspora, origin and development of old and new diaspora, contemporary situations of diaspora. Sir, you have beautifully elaborated the etymology, connotations, and problematics of the term diaspora, along with migrants' dilemma and Gandhiji's understanding about diaspora with contemporary applications in transnational identity. Sir, you have mapped the concept of Edward Said, Homi K. Bhabha, Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, Stuart Hall, Paul Gilroy, R. Radhakrishnan, Sura P. Rath, Vijay Mishra, and Robin Cohen with utmost zeal. I extend unfathomable gratitude to Honorable Chancellor Professor S.W. Akhtar, sir, for providing this rostrum for academic excellence. My sincere appreciation for Pro-Chancellor Dr. Syed Nadeem Akhtar and Vice-Chancellor Javed Masarrat, sir, for launching the online international faculty development program for the holistic development of the academia. I convey deep thanks to Dr. H.M. Arif Nadvi, Head Department of Languages, for motivating us and guiding us in organizing such brilliant sessions. I need to register appreciation for the meticulous efforts of Dr. Arina and Ms. Vanya in organizing this wonderful FDP. Dear Professor Pradhan, we aspire to share your magnanimous knowledge in future as well. Every special moment come to an end, and this is no exception. However, your session is like a perennial spring of knowledge that shall keep us enriched. Sir, you are a true ambassador of multi-layered diaspora studies. We have been fortunate enough to be supported by a team of highly talented and energetic colleagues from the Department of Languages. I also want to acknowledge the efforts of the logistic help and the supporting staff who have worked day and night to make this event a success. All of us have worked beyond our comfort zones to expand the contours of knowledge by organizing this online FDP. Finally, I convey a special thanks to all the participants who have embellished this event by their valuable participation. Thank you, everyone. Hope you all have a wonderful day ahead.
Okay, thank you all. Okay, should I leave? Okay, thank you, Vanya. Thank you, Vanya, and others. And it is also a great pleasure for me to interact with all of you. Okay, but we have no time for more discussion. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Okay.
Dear participants, you are expected to complete the assignments which are uploaded on Integral Learning Initiative ILI, and you'll be updated for the next session on the official WhatsApp group. Thank you everyone for this wonderful session.